It's so great to speak to you both today. I mean, I watched the film earlier today and I thought it was fantastic. It's such a kind of dark and twisted film, but I couldn't stop laughing throughout it. I mean, I just wondered,
Good,
did,
good.
did
Say
the
that loud.
did the kind of dark comedic elements and that kind of wicked, quite
Yeah,
droll kind of New Zealand
yes,
humor, did that come through in the script when you first got it?
Very
yeah,
much.
absolutely. The
That's true.
Grongu in Yol, you thought this is so disturbing, but there is something about the eccentricity and the extremities of it. You know, I don't think in any way it sets to laugh at the material, but there is just bitter recognition, laughter of bitter recognition of great truths about people in an institution and people being bullied.
Yeah.
Um,
And Dave
but
Crealy
it's
himself, he's a diabolical character, but he's got a sort of manic glee to him. He himself uh, loves kind of doing perverse comedy. After all, ventriloquism itself is a comedy act.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's that kind of laughter, which is almost quite nervous giggling you get when you're watching a kind of horror film, you know. But they're such great roles, and they both give you such a great deal to kind of get your teeth stuck into. I'm interested to know, and I guess I'll start with you, Jeffrey. I mean, what goes into picking roles for you now, and has that changed at all? Have your priorities shifted in regards to how you may have picked roles now to 40 years ago? Or have you always had the same kind of intentions and the same process?
um, well, I think John and I both describe ourselves as character actors, and that's been true for me since I was 20. My first professional job out of university theatre or even high school theatre. Um, the first role I ever played was like a smart script for children based on the Rapunzel story. And the central character was a witch played by a great actress in this company and two young rookies straight out of university review played her cat and I was her raven. And the raven was a very snobby, intellectual kind of character. And I wanted to give him dandruff. So I had Omo all through my long hair at the top. And the trouble was we were doing it we were doing it twice daily because it was for kids. And it was in summer. And the first scene I did, I sweated and this froth just kind of poured down all over my face. This was my stage debut,
This
you
is
know.
such insight into
So
Jeffrey.
everything I've chosen
Anything
since then.
he will devise for himself. You never told
Yeah.
us this, Jeffrey. It's the
The,
perfect story. You decided he had dandruff, that your
yeah.
husband had dandruff. Now, that's all you need to know about Jeffrey.
Yeah. Well, John said to me, we got together in LA for literally 48 hours just to read the script out loud together. And he said, I've had some teeth made. And I went, oh yes, of course. You have to get that one thing that says
The,
it'll be like a little mini mask that
oh,
when you see my interior, it's decayed. You
what?
know what I mean? And you try and find an image that's going to be the playing or the game of it will be that much more interesting.
Years ago, I worked with a terrific Australian director you may have heard of, George Miller.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
and when we were preparing it, he said, "What your character? What about a cold sore? Would you like?" And George, I don't, well, I don't want to. The makeup will be. He says, "All right, all right." Then, what about what about a bad eye? He kept at these things, and I couldn't figure out what is it you're looking for here, George. And he said, just something that takes you out of a sense of yourself. And that's always stuck in my mind because that's what I often do. Just what is just something that will wrench people away from their memory of everything I've ever done. Just a little thing. And in this case, It's the teeth, it's the eyes, it's the accent, and it's the ventriloquist doll. I mean, just put all those things together. Reading the script, you could see that it really required an actor to go way over the top with Dave Crealy, because he just pushes the envelope all the time, the emotional and psychological envelope of everybody in that institution. And that's the sort of the way I put it all together. And I would add these elements and just send photographs of them all the way across the world to New Zealand for James' approval. And sure enough, he would give me notes and I would change them, just slightly. The teeth were a little too extreme. I went to this brilliant craftsman in London. His name is Christopher Lyons, who had given me my jowls for Winston Churchill by making these little silicon plumpers inside my mouth. And he came up with like 3 or 4 different options for the teeth, and I sent them all to James. James is incredibly detailed and meticulous with every decision. So I made sure he was in on all my thinking.
And you mentioned, Geoffrey, before about you guys spending kind of 48 hours together. Did you guys know each other very well at all? And because I guess you're two such kind of respective kind of icons of kind of screen cinema, but I guess sometimes it can just happen when maybe paths just don't cross or stars don't align. But what was your relationship, you two, before this project?
Well, we did a film together 22 years ago, The Life and Death of Peter Sellers. So I was playing Peter Sellers and a lot of his alter egos. And John was playing Blake Edwards, who was his real life director. It was such a kind of labyrinth of a script because it was happening on so many different levels of reality in Peter Sellers' mind. And I was playing other characters that actors would, like Miriam Margolyes was my mother, but I got to play her. I got to be Emily Watson as my wife, in the film, and Stephen Fry was my agent, and I got to play him. So there was just this boisterous sense of lunacy in it, and we connected with that very well. And over the years, John and I have just run into each other at different events. I was at the Emmys nominated for Einstein when he was nominated for Winston Churchill. He won, which is great. It's such an amazing performance. And we sort of, we ran into each other in New York when I was doing something on Broadway, and he presented me with an award at a ceremony, and we went, look at us, you just have, it doesn't happen that often. Sometimes a film or a play might take up 3 or 4 or 5 months of your life. And then people, we become very peripatetic. We're wanderers, not minstrels, but we wander.
Mary, actually, in the course of these interviews today, I have recalled the first time I ever met Geoffrey, when we both had arrived in London to play, I to play Blake Edwards and him to play Peter Sellers. And we were in the same hotel. We were booked in rooms across from each other. And I ran into Geoffrey, full of jet lag myself. And he immediately took me into his room and said, yes, here, look at this. And he showed me like a half an hour of extraordinary footage of Peter Sellers from all his films and interviews and audio from the Goon Show. He was obsessed and deep into research for the role. And I thought immediately, wow, this is my kind of actor. He is just as dogged as I am. And
you have to prep, I think. I was doing that, a lot of that I was doing in the Caribbean, in a sort of a grass hut with a dialect coach, because she said, you've got, for Peter Sellers, you've got 48 voices you've got to create and invent. And so we started doing that on days off when I wasn't shooting Barbosa.
And it's because I was going to ask too, because I mean, one of the things I loved about this film was the kind of wonderful kind of sound design. It's a very visceral piece of cinema.
Yeah,
I just wondered
yeah.
about when you guys kind of watched it back, because did you get a lot more from watching it as a kind of finished piece, perhaps to shooting it, and just generally as actors across your careers, have you ever found yourself to be truly surprised at how different a project was to what you first maybe thought it was, be it for better or for
So
Yeah, it was
yeah,
great.
yeah, I did
Yeah,
because I saw it in a small cinema club in a small Italian village. They let me use their equipment, but it wasn't really up to the Dolby Atmos or the great sound design. When I finally saw it at the fantastic film in Austin, Texas, I was overwhelmed by the texture of the landscape of sound. Really quite, it does a lot of subliminal heavy lifting, and it's beautifully judged
yeah. For his
to
second,
put you into an ambience, you know.
only James' second feature film, and it's an amazingly accomplished piece of filmmaking. As was Coming Home in the Dark, his very first and very cheaply made film. Uh, but I must say, seeing it was such a revelation. You never quite had a clear sense of how these films, these scenes were being covered until you actually saw it complete. And suddenly all those stage directions in the script made perfect sense. He's really,
Yes, it was in the big print. The stage directions were so meticulous about, particularly with the decay of my, you know, neurological faculties. I'd be in a scene where I'd look away through a window, but when I looked back, I was in. There was a blip. There's a forgotten bit, you know, and you had to kind of keep all of that logical.
I know because it was all we sort of mentioned at the beginning. It's always nice to have a Stefan on screen, also spelt the same way as my name. And maybe I'm only asking this question because I'm a raging narcissist, but I was thinking about names. I mean, how much does a name help you access a
A
character?
lot,
Yeah,
a
be it
lot.
Gary or a Leonard, a Paul, a Stefan. Does it play a part in the process?
I looked at some real judges. I met some real judges in New Zealand, and they're proper people, but that to me they were too pedestrian and they were very bureaucratic, and their clothes weren't distinctive enough, you know. And then I came across some judges from a different era slightly, and pencil striped suits were very big. And I went, Stefan Mortensen. He's in the short story, but he's really not fleshed out at all. He's just mentioned. But James and Eli, the co-writer, decided they wanted a king kind of character, somebody who's the moral compass or the hero or whatever. And I thought, Stefan Mortensen, he could be, is he Danish? Has he got a Danish grandfather? And I was determined to not look banal and bureaucratic. So I actually based the look of the character on Arthur Rubinstein, the Polish pianist. I said to the makeup woman, I want hair like him because I want it to be a distinctive silhouette. And then I spent a long time finding the right glasses that just disappear. Do you know what I mean? So his eyes are kind of focused and not wearing anything that's going to cut him off from the audience. That's that sort of thing.
Yeah, because John, you also mentioned obviously, things like the teeth. Do you? I mean, I'm sure you've sort of asked these kind of questions before, but in terms of like when you're on shoots and you have little things, be it teeth, be it even the Jenny Pen kind of the sort of doll. But do you ever keep little special mementos from set? Maybe this is a very romanticized film fan thing to believe, but do you guys? You've been in such an array of remarkable films and projects. Do you have little souvenirs, maybe in a little room in your house that you like to keep to remind you of some of the projects you've been in?
Oh, I'm not sentimental about mementos, but I certainly I have a drawer full of spectacles, which have my own progressive so that I can read when I'm hanging around on the set without switching glasses. But mainly I hang on to my teeth because boy, did they come in handy. I still have my Buckaroo Banzai teeth from like 1985, and I've used them on several occasions. Most recently,
Wow.
when I was asked to
Socially, or is this professionally?
and I did Rudy Giuliani for Stephen Colbert. I brought out my teeth from Santa Claus the movie, great big bright choppers to play Rudy Giuliani. Like 30 years later, they don't fit quite as well, but you can be sure I'll keep Dave Crealy's teeth for the rest of my life.
I've got at the end of the first pirate film, there was that great chest filled with Aztec gold, and I went home with quite a few coins because I thought if this film does well and you get fan mail for it, it would be a great thing to send to somebody. You know what I mean? Some kid writing in, if they liked it, you could go, hey, don't tell anyone, but this is genuine Aztec gold signed by Barbosa. You know what I mean?
Just before I go, just very, very funny, because I know I'm sort of out of time, but just Geoffrey, I just wanted to say, because I know you're play kind of Groucho Marx, which I'm so looking forward to seeing. Well, just to end this interview, have you got a favorite Groucho Marx line or one-liner that you sort of gleaned from that script or that project, and learning more about him that you'd like to share with us?
Outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. So, or the other one that I liked is this is a real cryptic crossword. Rebus. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana. And you go, he's shifting the nouns to verbs
and I will give you my favorite Winston Churchill.
Oh, yes, please. Yes.
Which never appears in any version of him. A woman approached him at a reception and pointed out to him that his fly buttons were undone. And he replied, "It's not a problem. But that bird never leaves its nest."
Well, on that wonderful note, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you both. Without getting too unprofessional, I'm such huge fans of your respective careers and all of the great.
No, you can't get enough of that, Stefan. Thank you.
So
thanks, Stefan.
Add to the list, but thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Yeah, you too, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey, you guys!
Hey You Guys.
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey You Guys.
Hey, you guys!